Happy Thursday. It's 5 minutes after the hour. Glen Biegel here on the Glen Biegel Show, KOAN and KVNT. I would love to hear from you, and we are going to go across the board from the Iditarod to Valley Trash. Oh, yes, they're back. You know, I don't remember who it was called people from the Valley Trash, but it involved Palin in some way.
Wasn't it Ben Stevens?
I think, yeah, that sounds right.
That just came to my mind. I'm not sure why.
Ben Stevens objected.
Probably because I lived out in the valley when he said that.
So the Alaska Dispatch News continues the attack on Valley Trash. Let me tell you where the primary Democrat Party is ensconced. That would be Washington, D.C. and the New York Times. And let me tell you where the primary Republican Party is ensconced. That would be Juneau. Anytime you see anything that comes out in support of an establishment candidate comes from Juneau. Anytime you see anything that supports an establishment candidate for the Democrats, it comes from Washington, D.C. and the New York Times. Oh, and the school system. So here you've got this two versions of reality that play out. In the Alaska Dispatch News, they call the Republicans letting the president know, hey, when you sign a treaty having to do with somebody's nuclear capability that disagrees with what we previously passed, you've got to go through us. And the Alaska Dispatch News calls 47 senators that they are in trouble for this. What was the exact phrase? Trying to remember here. Oops. I think I just closed Senator Sullivan under fire for Iran letter. This is actually from KTVA. You know, just because the Democrats don't like something and the president can't act like a dictator, guess what? We elect people. We have three branches of government. And one of them, the Senate, is supposed to approve treaties, which determine how we're going to treat other countries. It's very noteworthy to watch the Democrats object to our Senator Sullivan and agree with Senator Murkowski. It's very instructional. I find it eye-opening. So we will cover that as well. Big things moving. The Alaska Supreme Court issues a stay over the school funding formula. I love this. Ketchikan says, you know what? You've given us the power to be our own lawmakers, to set local policy in all different kinds of areas. We like the power, but we don't want any financial responsibility. So we like the fact that you gave us power and that we're a subdivision of the political structure of the state of Alaska, but we don't want to pay for it. So we don't want to pay for our schools. That's all on you. Now, who passes the contracts by which the teachers are paid and the people who clean the garbage cans are paid and the bus drivers are paid and the food attendants are paid? Well, that would be the school district with funds from the state of Alaska. That's who writes those contracts, is that school district who's been granted authority by the state of Alaska to act and pass contracts. And then they say, oh, by the way, I don't know that I really want to pay for that. I mean, what do you think of that? Is this not, it is the perfect example of America. America as it has become. You know, I've talked here about, and I think the passing of the marijuana law is a perfect example of what America was and what America's become. I don't really fault people. You want to try marijuana, whatever. If my kids tried marijuana, I would be devastated. God gave them a wonderful world in which to act and to love and to believe, and they don't need anything else. Other things are not necessary because you become dependent on those, and then you can't see the real world for what it is, and you can't interact with real people for what they are, and it steals something from you. You don't get something from drugs. It steals something from you. So I would be devastated, but look, I don't want people arrested for it. I get that. But society, with the marijuana passing of the law where we're going to commercialize it, we're going to put it into candies. We're going to put it into vapes. We're going to be huffing this stuff, huffing and puffing. We're going to be smoking it everywhere, all over the city. in just about half the apartments, probably. Who knows how many different people on campus are going to be smoking this stuff? Your kids are going to be offered it 5 times a day, 10 times a day. It is going to be commercialized, not just legal, but commercialized. They're going to be pushing it. People are going to have their family business. Their small business is going to depend on them selling it to more people and more of it and stronger of it and competing with the guy next door. Well, I got 10 times the THC. I got 12 times the THC. You can get high on this in like 5 seconds. We're changing as a society. We just are. And this lawsuit from Ketchikan is a good example of how we're changing. They don't want to pay. They want all the power, but they don't want to pay for it. Then to me, that's really where society's headed. It's like a bunch of juvenile delinquents that all of a sudden became 25. Now they got their own apartment. They live together, and they're trying to figure out what kind of rules. And what you've got is you've got a whole bunch, you've got 2 or 3 people. Let's say there's 7 people staying there. You got 2 or 3 people who are responsible, and they pay all the bills. They're steady. They go to work every day. And then you got 2 or 3 people that kind of sit around and smoke dope. They're hanging out. They play video games. They eat potato chips, and they suck the life out of these 2 or 3 people who are doing the right thing. Then you got a couple of people who just don't care. They remember when they were young, and we kind of like not having a whole lot of rules. And if you want to work hard, then that's really good for you. And so I just let the guys who are smoking dope and hanging out and playing video games, just leave them alone. Will you just leave them alone? And so that's kind of the way our society's split. We got a bunch of people who just want to do what they want to do, and they want to be irresponsible. Well, some people want to be responsible, and they don't want to pay for other people to be irresponsible. And then you got a couple of people, they just don't care anymore. They don't want to fight. They're tired of the fight. Oh, so much to do today. It is the Glen Biegel Show, 12 minutes after the hour. I would love to hear from you. Dan Ham's going to be on in a little while talking about the Alaska Republican Assembly and what could be I don't know if it'll be deciding in one direction or the other. A lot of people will consider it to be a very ill-timed and ill-stated email from the Republican Assembly. Stay tuned. 569-1080-357-5868. The Glen Biegel Show. Bonnie Cameron's here, too. Stay tuned. So much to do, so little time, 16 minutes after the hour. Anything on your mind? Love to hear from you. Bonnie's actually going to be sitting on the hot seat again tomorrow. And you landed Commissioner Hanley.
I am so excited to hopefully finally get some answers.
What kind of answers do you think that Commissioner Hanley might give you about Common Core?
Truthful answers.
Okay, well, let me just clue you in when he says we are not implementing Common Core.
He's going to say, we implemented Alaska standards.
Yes, and they're totally different. And all they are, as I heard directly from Jean Parnell, all they are is to say, in the third grade, children will know how to capitalize a sentence. That's what he'll say.
Okay.
So there you go.
Tune in for a good interview.
Tune in.
And it's, I told him it's not a gotcha interview. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for truth and some clarity, because I think we're given a lot of information that might be good and might be bad.
Well, with them controlling $2.1 billion in state spending, it's an area of the budget that simply can't stay as it is. So to my mind, it's very important, even economically, just to decide whether or not they should retain the monopoly power that they have. The second, and this is probably the most important statistic I think I heard in government in maybe the last few years, 80% of the people who work for the Department of Education at the state level are funded by federal grants. Let me ask you a question, honest question. If you were funded by a federal grant, wouldn't you be interested maybe more in implementing the federal statutes and the federal regulations by which you got your federal grant than in defending the state of Alaska from creep and overreach by the federal government? Folks, there's just no question. That statistic proves it. We are an administrative arm of Washington, D.C. That's all we are. Our curriculum is determined by take away their monopoly, for gosh sakes. What are you doing? Take away their monopoly. Fight Common Core. There is no possible way that Common Core can improve every child. That's not how it works. It doesn't work that way. Does it have to drive you nuts? I think I might be driven nuts by Common Core. Common Core may actually drive me over the edge.
The testing is also a big concern, because there's lots of talk of data mining. I mean, you can't dispute it anymore. It's a fact. It's going to happen. It came in with it.
They ask you about questions like, do you have a gun in the house? How do your parents treat you? What in the heck? What in the heck are they doing? What kind of crazy data mining are they doing? I mean, the kind of data mining that I want, I don't even care about demographic data mining for the most part. I would like to know rich and poor. That's pretty interesting to me. I would like to know if you have a dad or if you have a single parent. How do you do on tests? Gee, that might reveal something about how life really works. I'm enjoying something immensely. I wanted to give you a couple of positive pieces of information here to start the program off. Government is the number one problem in the country, Americans say. Now, I wish it was a majority of Americans have said that, but it's pretty close. I was actually very, very surprised how close it was. There's a lot in this piece. Wall Street Journal publishes this. Do you notice how your browser, by the way, they have these underlined words that they just won't let you even hover over now? It's the most annoying thing.
It's probably net neutrality. I'm blaming that on everything now.
It's not net neutrality. It's just the advertisers. They know that if they allow you to scroll down without giving you another ad, gosh knows what you'll do with your life. The Glen Biegel program here on KOAN, KBNT, 20 minutes after the hour. Government has been named the most important problem facing the country for 4 straight months and has widened its lead over the second ranking issue of the economy. Compared to last month, the Gallup poll said 18% of Americans named dissatisfaction with government as the most important problem facing the country, followed by the economy at 11% and jobs at 10%. In February, government was still tops at 17%. I find these kinds of polls at least somewhat hopeful. They help us understand that the people are really want to listen to Republicans. And if we have good candidates, as we had here, for instance, running against Mark Begich, we can win. We could actually get conservatives if they know that I'm as conservative as I am, and the person we elected was very conservative. But if I run out and start screaming it from the rooftops and try to pick fights with everybody, I won't be able to get elected. Kind of an important, but you do have to start with a conservative. I mean, that's a core part of that argument there. I'm not saying that you try to find a moderate who knows how to talk to the media. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying find conservatives who know how to keep their mouths shut and how to say great. It's great a lot. The Glen Biegel Show here on KOAN KVNT. The reports out of Ferguson, and at least Pat Katak is savaging the police once again. I don't know how you fix such a broken community. So here are the statistics that Elise Pat Katak writes. Her conclusion, by the way, with reports like those out of Ferguson, it's hard to believe in police. Wow. In Ferguson, a community that is 67% African American, 85% of the vehicle stops, 93% of arrests, and 88% of the use of force involved African Americans. Top that off with the fact that being black made you almost 100% more likely to spend more than 2 days in jail for any given offense. And you can see where blacks might just be a little paranoid about their police. The one that she holds most important is the use of dogs. 100% of the use of dogs. My understanding is they only use dogs when there's drugs involved. I mean, why else would you have a dog? A dog's purpose is not to attack. It's to sniff drugs out, I suppose. Well, that's the story out of Ferguson. The real problem is blacks are heavily overrepresented on death row. They are heavily overrepresented in murders. 4 times the number of blacks murder according to the population. About 45% of murders are performed by blacks, and they are only 11% of the population. What is it that you do about a broken social order? And I don't know. I mean, at least Pat Katak's response is, well, you don't trust the police. That's her response. It's I guess it's not that easy. It's certainly not that easy. It'd be hard to be a policeman. And I have a feeling that these attacks on police, they're going to become more and more. When somebody like Elise Pat Katak, who is supposed to have, sort of an understanding, she's supposed to be well respected. When she says things, it matters. The Alaska Dispatch News carries her letters, not because she's some kind of liberal crackpot, even though I think she's fairly far out on the left. I have agreed with probably 1 out of 10, maybe 2 out of 10 of her articles, at least in some way. But what do you do? I mean, it's like going into the military is getting harder and harder as you see priests in the military forced to perform homosexual weddings, even though it's against their religious beliefs. I mean, you just see stranger and stranger things. A lot of people who are being let out of the military are some of the highest decorated and most trustworthy leaders in the military. And then you come to reports like this attack on the police in Ferguson. So what is the result? The result, unfortunately, is 2 police were shot today, one of them in the face. The gunman's still at large, by the way. Ferguson shooter still on the loose. The protesters who witnessed the gunning down of these 2 police by one of the protesters, they celebrated. I'm going to ask you a question. The question that I'm going to ask you is, how close is chaos? And I guess, for you live on South Side. There's no shots that ring out. If a shot rings out, you call the police and they respond. There isn't, I guess if you leave your house could be burglarized, because that actually happens quite a bit in South Anchorage. I don't know if people know that. There's a lot of burglaries that go on in South Anchorage. Most of the time they wait for the snowbirds to clear out, and then they clear out your house. But the answer to my question, how close is chaos away? It's as close as Ferguson. This is what society looked like without a dad. This is what society looks like without enough jobs. I guess my fear is, how close is that to Alaska? They just turned down 3,000 direct jobs for Pebble Mine on the fear that it was going to affect their fish somehow. But yet they approved the Donlin Creek mine right down the drainage, right down the road, same drainage. That doesn't seem to make any sense. It almost seems to be racist, frankly. But if we don't start working out what people are supposed to do with their lives and how they're supposed to prepare their families and lead a family, I don't think Ferguson is actually too far away from Alaska. We've got a short period of time here, by the way. What I want you to think of is, I want you to understand the stakes. This isn't tiddlywinks. This isn't, gee, it would be nice if our legislature cut spending, because we won't be able to afford to live here, and a lot of us will have to leave if they don't figure out how to restrain the size of government, if they don't figure out how to rein in what people are paid to be on welfare and not work. We just won't be able to afford them. You're all going to have to get a job, which means we got to start clearing forests. We got to start replanting trees. We got to start mining the earth. We have to get oil production going on here. We got to build roads. We got to build houses. We got to build bridges. There's a lot that has to happen. And we are participants in the future that Alaska has in front of her. Which do you choose? 28 minutes after the hour. Oops. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Glenn, how are you?
Well, I'm doing well. I suppose you heard the explosions here in Anchorage from the ADN story.
Yeah, last I heard it was up to 1,500 likes.
Yeah. Well, and I do wonder whether this could actually backfire. What is your what's your take on it, and what's your view of them calling you a Valley group?
Well, most of our members are in the Valley. We're a statewide organization, but right now it's we're basically we have our headquarters in the Valley at the moment. But we're a statewide organization. We've got members all over the state, all the way from Fairbanks down to Kitchikan.
All right. Well, we're going to get to all that. Anything you were interested in having me bring up?
Just whatever you think is pertinent. I have to apologize here. I'm on a hotel Wi-Fi network with my cell phone. So if I fade in and out, it's because of the wireless connection here. It's not that great.
Okay. Well, you sound fine. So we'll be right with you. Just stay on with me, okay?
Okay. All right. Thanks, Glenn.
"27 minutes before the hour. It is the Glen Biegel Show here on KOAN and KVNT. If you have questions for Dan Ham and the Alaska Republican Assembly, give us a call, 569-1080-357, 5868. That's the number out in the Valley. Let me bring Dan Ham on with me here. Dan, welcome.
Oh, Glenn, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. Of course, I'm very familiar with the Alaska Republican Assembly, and I've had you on the program several times. I believe that most of the establishment decisions for the statewide organization either come out of Randy Riedrich's, wherever he's living, or they come out of Juneau. And I believe that for Democrats, most of their decisions support and their definition come out of Washington, D.C. or the New York Times. Well, what's the deal? This sounds to me like Valley trash. This is the Valley trash argument that Ben Stevens dug up a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that what it is? Is we? It's obviously Alaska Republican Assembly, statewide organization. I'm a member. I live here in town. People live all over the state, and they're members of Alaska Republican. But what do you make of it? I mean, why? I guess this is their strongest argument. They are not in support of you, so this is the way that they trash you.
Yeah, well, that's okay. We're growing. We've only been in the state now for just a little over a year. The statewide Republican assemblies are in between 30 and 40 states right now. They're kind of we call ourselves the Republican wing of the Republican Party. We're kind of a tent within the party itself. And our mission is to maintain the conservative principles of the party, which, as you know, it seems like the longer you're in office, the farther you tend to stray from those principles. But we support, limited government, balanced budget, traditional family, American family. We support choice in education. All those values that are in the Republican Party platform that typically aren't reflected well in the Republican mainstream today, at least those have been in office 10, 20, and 30 years. They become indistinguishable from the other party.
It is a lot of these things are very difficult to say because in schools, I'd venture to say you won't find very many people who will understand why marriage has any importance, male-female marriage resulting in children, marriage resulting in fathers knowing their children. They don't have a clue as to what marriage is for and why society should care. Are there still enough people who understand that, or is this an argument that had its day and now no longer carries the power?
Well, history kind of ebbs and flows as far as the traditional family and traditional marriage. We saw in the 70s, we saw a backlash to the 50s in terms of the traditional marriage, and people kind of came together in the 80s and they went back to church and they, refound their family values, and that created just a wonderful period of prosperity, and it's a good time to live in the 80s and 90s, and you and I were a part of that generation that grew up in those years. And now we're kind of drifting away from that again. And I have a very fortunate position to travel with my career. I traveled a lot of places, and I've been to places that don't value traditional marriage and family, and quite honestly, they're the scariest places on the planet. Places like Africa, where there is libertarian as you can speak, as you can imagine. I mean, you can do anything you want. There's almost no rules in society, which is kind of one faction of our country just kind of espouses that. But basically, if you don't have a father in the home, this family structure is unstable. The kids aren't raised with a strong role model, and society just doesn't. We believe that in traditional values that basically marriage and family are the bedrock of society. That's what you build your society up from. If you don't have those bedrocks, you're always out of balance. So,
well, it's been said, and I think it's true, that the power of government is inversely proportional to the strength of families. If families are weak and children are not well controlled and they're not self-defining and they aren't self-sufficient, then the government is going to have to take care of a lot of people. The government has to grow if families are weak. Conversely, if families are strong, we don't need government. Children know what they're supposed to do. They'll take care of their neighbor.
You're exactly right. The family is by far the most critical building block of society. Anywhere you have a strong marriage and family, you have people that tend to be self-sufficient. As you said, when you have a broken family, you have people that need to be dependent on others or the government for their well-being. So yes, the marriage and family is those of you who are of faith, like myself, the marriage and family are the very bedrock of society. That's where we pass down our freedom values. That's where we pass down personal responsibility.
Well, also freedom, and the Prop 5, which, if people don't understand, it's never really been brought up. It was brought up in this article, finally, from Alaska Dispatch News. Valley Group starts campaign for Anchorage mayor candidate Demboski. Are you working with Amy directly?
No. What we're doing is this race, and we're involved in many other things, but in this particular instance, we got in the race kind of late. We decided to pick a candidate that was the most in alignment with our conservative values, and that candidate's Amy Demboski. She's both a fiscal and a social conservative, so she's in the most alignment with our platform.
Well, let me ask you about the title of this article here. Dan Ham from Alaska Republican Assembly. Valley Group. Are you a Valley Group?
Well, we're a statewide group.
Okay, so that's inaccurate. Number one, Devin Kelly, if you're listening, you've gotten one strike against you in your title. Valley Group starts campaign for Anchorage mayor candidate Demboski. Did you start a campaign for Anchorage mayor candidate Demboski? And what does that mean that you start a campaign?
Well, let me tell you how this works. I have to back up a little bit for your listeners here. As a result of the 2010 Citizens United Supreme Court case, you can form a federally regulated independent expenditures PAC. That's a political action committee.
Is that called a campaign?
Well, it's a PAC.
Okay, so it's not called a campaign. So Valley Group starts campaign. Okay, so that's two strikes. The next thing I have a problem with, Dan Ham, I hate to go through this because I honestly don't think that Devin Kelly has the slightest clue that he has slandered both the political process, your group, and Amy Demboski. Oh, he never even got to the thing. Okay. Can you start a campaign for Anchorage, or rather in support of mayoral candidate Amy Demboski? Because
Well,
what for Anchorage mayor candidate Demboski means, literally in English, is that Amy Demboski is a mayor candidate, and you started a campaign for her.
Well, our super PAC is supporting her candidacy indirectly.
Okay, but the four puts the impetus of this on mayor candidate Demboski. That's my point. You are forming an independent expenditure group on behalf of, in support of Amy Demboski. That is so. Both the English of this title and two legitimate, absolute, and total factual errors are contained in the very title of the story. How can you possibly get any more blatant in your, in the bias of a news organization? I guess what I suggest to the Alaska Dispatch News, you have started a campaign against Amy Demboski. Why don't you go down to APOC and register until you learn how to write a title? How about that? Anyway, that's the way I feel when I read these things. I get outraged because I realize what the power of words is. The power of the words that Devin Kelly uses there lead people to a false impression of exactly who wrote this thing that said that Amy Demboski, as mayor, will veto, in your opinion, any homosexual ordinance, or whoever the campaign assistant was.
In Devin Kelly's defense,
this ought to be good.
Our correspondent, I'm out of town, so our correspondence has been via email, so I think she did a pretty good job of coding our email exchange. So, in the concept of a super PAC, an independent expenditure PAC, is really new to Alaska and most states. It's basically a federal organization that almost null and voids a lot of state finance law or creates a separate category.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in our group, for instance, we have a number of different bank accounts, and they're all regulated highly by different organizations. Like, for instance, we were regulated by APOC, like all candidates in Alaska. Those are reported through APOC. We have a federal account. Those are reported to the Federal Election Committee or Commission, the FEC, under a completely different set of regulations. So depending on whether you work as a group or a PAC, or if you're giving money to a candidate directly, there are completely different rules and reporting procedures and regulations. Our group is independent. We're supporting Amy's campaign indirectly because she supports her PACs. And the biggest thing I haven't really got to it yet is the fact that we wanted a candidate, elected mayor, that will not sign a gay rights in Anchorage. And the reason we're so adamantly against that, other than the fact that we support the traditional marriage and family, which is the bedrock of society, to us that's very critical to our beliefs. But other than that, these ordinances have been steadily and almost innocuously being passed in cities across the country. I don't know if this is a nationwide movement or what, but a lot of city councils have passed the initiatives, and they sound really innocuous on the surface. They sound like we will not discriminate based on age or gender or race or sexual orientation, and it's really hard to argue with that. But when you see what's happened as a result of these ordinances, what the consequences have been, it's led to a whole host of problems. For instance, in Houston, Texas, in last October, the mayor basically subpoenaed the sermons of several pastors in the area. I think they subpoenaed 5 years worth of pastor sermons, and their communication between the pastors and the churches, just to see if they perhaps violated the Houston, Texas gay rights ordinance. So you can imagine if you were a pastor and you read a passage in the Bible and that talked about the morality of the traditional family and traditional marriage, and you read that and this got subpoenaed, next thing you know, you're facing jail time or a fine for violating a rather innocuous looking civil rights ordinance. That's happened. The political backlash has kind of stopped that, but
It's
thing
just
that
a matter of
happened
time, though. I mean, you talk about freedom of
it's
speech. There is out. Freedom of religion is out. The Bible is out. Your pastor being subpoenaed by some left-wing activist who happens to be a mayor. I mean, it grants super legislative and super legal authority to left-wing activists who become mayors. And if Berkowitz becomes mayor, I guarantee you this ordinance will pass, Prop 5, in whatever form. And what you say is exactly what will happen. Hey, Dan, I appreciate you calling in.
Thank you, Glenn. Appreciate it.
All right. It is the Glen Biegel Show, 14 minutes before the hour. You didn't think it could happen here. I mean, who could have imagined it? But this was turned away in large majority by a lot of regular thinking people. And it will need to it will need to happen again. Stay tuned. "11 minutes before." If you're looking for a place to help with your roof, maybe you got roofing problems, maybe you need a new roof. Maybe it's been 20 or 30, 35 years since you got your roof put on. That's as long as roofs last, especially very harsh climate. How about this? A free re-roofing estimate, 345-5555 or to Earhart Roofing and their crack professional team. They'll give you a free re-roofing estimate. Doesn't cost you, always the low bidder, always the best choice. Better Business Company of the Year? Oh no. Better Business Bureau bid for all companies in the entire state of Alaska. These guys are fantastic. When you think roofing, think Earhart, EARHART. I don't want my words to be good. When I say normal, that kind of thing. What I do mean is most normal people do not want pastors sermons to be subpoenaed by a left-wing fanatic mayor. Most people want sexuality, sexual orientation, gender identity, if it is non-traditional and people want to shove it in your face, to be kept in private. They don't really care what you do in private. What you do in public could become a problem. And that's whether you're heterosexual or homosexual or indeterminate, whatever it is. Our sexuality is to be kept separate, right? It's a private thing. And it's funny because I remember that the left was always complaining about what conservatives wanted to keep you from doing while it's in private. Now they want to shove it in your face while it's public. Don't you find that to be fun? But I would say most normal people agree that sexuality needs to be private. You know how this lost, by the way, here in Anchorage, and it was a turnaround. I mean, the left was outspending conservatives 2, 3, 4 to 1, and the issue was going to pass. What they found out was if a church rented a wedding facility, a reception facility, to somebody who was part of their parish, they had to rent to people from the Satan worshiping group. They had to rent from people as long as it was a transgender homosexual wedding. You could be from wherever. All of a sudden, regular religious organizations start losing their power. And then you get to, what about adoptions? The Catholic Church thinks that it's better for a man and a woman to adopt a child. Boy, that's really radical. What are they thinking? What kind of Stone Age crazy people are they that you would want a mom and a dad to raise a child? That would be illegal. The Catholic Church helping with adoptions, and they do this at great cost, by the way. It saves taxpayers tens of millions of dollars to have the Catholic Church involved in this. Now, the left doesn't care about the saving of money. They don't care about children. What they care about is social change. Changing our language, changing our family structure, changing our government structure, changing the powers of government. When I say normal thinking people, I'm not talking about your sexual orientation. I want that to be clear. What I'm talking about is people who understand that government should not have the power to take away your business because somebody who wants to dress like a woman walks into your shop and wants a hamburger. Because somebody who has not completed their transgender treatment and they're still anatomically the wrong type, dressed as a woman, and they want to go into the women's bathroom because you say, you know what, that's not acceptable. There are things which I think we used to all agree on. I mean, it was very simple. This is the way it was said before. No shirt, no shoes, no service. Well, now it could be pantyhose, high heels, and a bad-looking dress, no service. Keep your sexuality to yourself. That's a private affair. And I think as long as, and this was the point that I made when I went to testify on Prop 5, we have a society that's built on mutual respect. You respect other people, they respect you. We all know where the boundaries are, where the lines are, and we don't pass laws which say, you know, I don't like the way you think about me, so I'm going to pass a law which says you can't. Anderson, who's on in the mornings, he had a great point on this. He said what made him uncomfortable about this and what he thought was over the top is raising sexual orientation and gender identity to the level of your skin color, of your sex, of your age, of your creed. He said, that's just going too far. That leaves way too much interpretation to be had between the lines there. Let me go to the phones. Love to hear from you. 569-1080. Do you think that this Prop 5 is playing scenes? Do you think the Alaska Republican Assembly could not have asked for a better story from the Alaska Dispatch News now that I have revealed the fraudulity, if I may create a word, of their title? 569-1080, 357-5868. Catherine, welcome.
Hello, Glenn.
Hi.
I was just wondering what you thought about this new announcement now from Fairbanks and their new dorm rooms that are open to whatever.
Co-ed dorm rooms, yeah, and the difficulty comes, and of course, the education establishment is pushing this, Catherine. They love nothing more than your sexuality can change. It's here, it's there, it's out in public, it's in private, it's in your face, it's wherever it is. So yeah, they're gonna change some of the dorm rooms are going to become transgender. They're and they actually will have male and female in the same dorm room.
I can't believe. I mean, I just wonder what a parent would think. I just wonder if that's going to decrease their enrollment.
Hey, Catherine, as long as they're all smoking the same marijuana, I think the parents are going to be just fine with it. Don't you?
You really do?
No, I think this freaks parents out. They're like, what are you, they didn't used to have co-ed dorms. Actually, some places they had co-ed dorms, but I don't think they had co-ed rooms. Okay.
I think it was floors. I think from what I always understood when they first started that there would be a floor of girls and a floor of boys.
That's probably, well, look, the thing is, Catherine, of course, all this is going to mix it all up, and it's going to become very, very strange, odd for people to know what's right and know what's wrong, and that's kind of the left's goal here. Make it a little more confusing. Confuse this is my right to be odd, and I don't think boys and girls should be rooming together at the expense of the state, because these are all supplemented by the state of Alaska, by the way.
That's right. Yeah, goody. And they just keep wanting more, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm sure we haven't seen the extent of the change that they'd like. Hey, Catherine, I appreciate the call.
Okay, bye.
569-10. And we're going to have an update from Cheryl Mativa. Big news out there. There's a question of whose race is this to lose, or is it nobody's to lose? And Cheryl Mativa's got a big update for the said that we should all watch. Boy, was she ever on the ball. She nailed it. So we'll talk about that. Cheryl Mativa will be back with us. This is the Glen Biegel Show on KOAN, KVNT. Your drive home continues right here.
Well, give me a team and a good lead dog and a sled that's built so fine, and let me race those miles to Nome 1049. Then when I get back to my home, hey, I can tell my tale.
5 after the hour. I did the Iditarod Trail. Oh, my Lord. Here we are. The Glen Biegel Show, KOAN, KVNT 569 1080. I'm hooked on the Iditarod Trail. I'm refreshing my screen. I'm looking at standings. I'm watching the little GPS dots. I've rewatched the thing like 3 or 4 times, and you get to rewatch the last hour. And I think they hide from you like the last 60 minutes.
So you'll tune into the TV.
Well, no, I won't watch the TV. I don't even know that I have a functioning TV. I must, though, because I watch the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's like me too. I have all the 2, 4, 7, 9, 11, 13. It's all the basic channels.
Well, no, I mean, I don't have a functional TV normally during the year.
Oh.
At that time of the year, I set up a TV that receives whatever signal, and then I have a functional TV. I don't know. I don't have time for that. I don't.
Yeah.
I decided when I had 9 children, not that I decided that, it was just sort of, sometimes these things happen, but you kind of decide. And that I probably needed to make more money than average people. And in order to do that, since I'm not all that clever, had to work a little harder than average person. So I don't really get, what is it? The numbers are probably dropping right now on how much people watch television, but they're supplementing with how much they watch Netflix.
Yes. And so you have to buy more and more data, and
I think people are going to increase over their total amount because the television shows are so fascinating.
It's the commercials that are so bad.
Oh.
That's why we got rid of ours.
I can imagine. Yeah. What was I watching? I was watching.
Oh, yeah. They're
Apparently, really good-looking ladies like eat their burgers really, really slowly.
And really big burgers.
Really, really big burgers very slowly. And sometimes, and most of the time, actually, I think they're wearing fairly skimpy outfits.
Yes.
That's kind of what I got out of it.
Yes. Okay, let's turn off the commercial.
Is anybody else hungry? Oh, yes, whatever.
No, it's true. We've gone to iTunes. We just buy a season off iTunes, or go to like PBS app, or one of those things. ABC has one too. You can go and just watch the television alone.
Oh.
You don't have to watch the TV on cable. So we got rid of all our cable, and we have saved a lot of money.
You order the television through a web service so that you don't watch commercials.
Yes.
I think my mind has just been blown.
It saves a lot of money. I mean, if I buy the season of the Duggars, which is one of our favorite shows.
Now, what happens in the Duggars? What is their deal? Isn't one of them very cute, though, by the way?
They
The girls.
Yeah, well, I think they eventually get married, but
okay.
The old there's 3 of them that are married now.
And what does the dad do? Because I can't figure out.
He's
how
into
to have
real estate.
children.
Yeah, he's into real estate. He sells real estate.
He's a wheeler. He's a dealer.
Yeah, he buys buildings, sells them. He's really good at that.
All right. I love that, by the way. People who just generate money walking around. They're looking around and they see opportunity. Hey, look at that opportunity. Let me turn that into a little bit of money. Oh, look, another opportunity. I'll turn that into some cash. So I like that.
And their
that's kind of the
slogan
American way.
is buy used, save the difference.
I agree with that.
Yes, I'll bet you have to
100%.
do a lot of that.
I say auto sales all the time, that if I drove off the lot, I could literally feel the $5,000 being sucked out of my family net worth as I drove the 100 feet from the lot to the street. I know I could feel it. I've never bought a car for more than $6,000, by the way.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things you give up when you have a large family. We don't go on vacations, we don't have fancy cars. We don't have the nicest of clothes. And a couple of things at the house are actually not working all that well.
But you have a lot of smiles, lots of laughter, lots of energy.
No, none of any of that.
Okay, in your household.
On occasion. the children can be grateful. I've had the greatest time, by the way. I've been working with my daughter. She's going to Thomas Aquinas College down California, finishing up her 4th year. So she's going to graduate here. And hopefully she'll go on to be a lawyer. That's my hire for her, one of the good guys. You know, if we don't have conservative lawyers, I really think the conservative movement is finished. That's just another way that the left is going to finish us off. But I've working with her on her thesis for school. So that was, I do think there is a lot of opportunity to have a great time. 10 minutes after the hour here, Glen Biegel show. So Senator Sullivan is under fire for Iran letter. This is from KTVA. And I like the way that the left always assume they think and whatever they see, that's the way the world really is. Senator Sullivan is highly praised for his stand on the Iran letter. He stands with 47 senators. The Democrats got their butts handed to them. They got walloped. We put so many conservatives in the Senate, it is making the Democrats' heads collectively spin. They don't know what happened to them. They didn't even think they were going to lose Mark Begich. They lost 9 seats. They lost 9 seats. They lost a historic election. I tell you what, let me tell you a little story here, KTVA. Senator Sullivan ain't under fire. No how, no way, nowhere. What are you talking about? You wish you dream this stuff up, Elizabeth Reigns. You dream it up and you wish it was true. Senator Sullivan is representing his state. The last thing we want to see is Israel threatened by a nuclear Iran. Thank you very much. By this president or any other left winger. So the idea that Senator Sullivan is under fire from a bunch of left-wing fanatics who don't want our senator, who's supposed to approve treaties, to speak, you can go shove it. How about that? How's that for under fire?
Great. I love it.
There you go.
Go shove it.
Am I vilifying people?
No, you're just rabble-rousing
I'm rabble-rousing again. Doggone it. No, this is real. I got news for you, people. The left is always going to act like their side is the only show 12 minutes after the hour.
Well, way up in Alaska.
16 minutes after the hour of the Glen Biegel Show here on KOAN, KVNT, our sponsor for this hour of the program, Alaska's Independent Subaru Service Center, 562-3919. That'll get you over to A&A The Shop, aatheshop.com online. What do they got? Oh, not much. Just the best warranty in the state of Alaska, 36-month, 36,000-mile warranty, both parts and labor. You've never heard of anything like that. How do you think they were voted best shop in Anchorage 6 out of the last 12 years? They are an amazing crew, and they know their business. They only deal with Subarus. 562-3919-696-2096. A&A The Shop, our sponsor for this hour of the show. Let me go to Cheryl Mativa, who has our Iditarod update. I became an Iditarod subscriber this morning, and I've been watching those little dots all day long and reading all about this stuff.
It is so much fun, isn't it?
Oh, you can't get enough of it. You just it's so cold there. They're in such amazing condition, and conditions that it's just fascinating to watch. Every little turn of the trail, every little time somebody takes their 8-hour or whatever. I mean, it's just, there's a lot to know. There's a lot to realize. Do you want to start with where the race is now? Do you want to start with the biggest surprise in it? Where do you want to go?
Why don't we just start right now with our top contenders and we can go from there, Glenn. I'll tell you what, you're speaking of cold, and we've not had a lot of snowfall this year, but the mushers have been training in similar conditions. I mean, not quite this cold, but it's been a really cold winter up in Eureka and over on the Denali Highway where they've been doing some training. And so that part, but man, when you hit 20, 30 below, it's just cold.
Well, you think about it, you got to bring all that air into your lungs, and you're breathing, and I hate to breathe into your ear. That's actually kind of annoying.
Kind of creepy and kind of cool all at the same time.
But the point is that here you have these dogs, and you got to figure they've got to be in great condition. They've got to be ready for this. Their bodies have to be just tuned and honed in order to be able to handle breathing in and breathing out for 15, 16 hours a day, 20, 30 below air.
Well, the dogs are bred for it, but you are correct. But what's really interesting is the caloric intake, the calories that these dogs are eating per day, 10, 13,000 calories
Everybody's
a day.
jealous of that, by the way. I wish I could eat.
Yeah, because they're putting weight on. It's amazing. Sometimes I've seen dogs across the line in Nome in just as good a condition. I mean, actually have put weight on the trail because they're having such a high calorie intake. Now, something you mentioned, Glenn, was, the breathing of the mushers as well, right?
Okay.
So a lot of people may not realize the reason mushers wear fur ruffs, okay, and you often will even see close to the face Wolverine. It's not a fashion statement. We wear furs because it is the only natural will draw the frost away from the nose and mouth and prevent frostbite to your face and your lungs.
Because when it's 20 below and you're going 10, 15 miles an hour and a 10, 15 mile an hour headwind, everything freezes right away.
Exactly. And as you're breathing, that moisture freezes to your face, hence frostbite. It freezes to your eyelashes, your hair, and internally. So there's a common sense reason you see fur ruffs out there, and it makes perfect sense. And, sometimes I've come off the trail and all the fur around my face is frozen, but I'm perfectly fine.
I'm speaking with Cheryl Mativa. She's given us an update on the Iditarod. I read something strange as I was becoming a member, and I hope people go out there, support the Iditarod. It's $20. You can watch all the GPS locations. You get all the updates. I mean, it's just a great addition to your life during these, 9, 10, 11 days that the Iditarod is going to be run. One of the things that I saw, though, in one of the notes was Mitch Seavey just blew through Galena, and he picked up some hot water, but they knew he was going to stop relatively soon because very shortly all of the food would freeze, I think is what they said.
Right, exactly. So they knew he was going to get through town, camp a couple miles out while that water was still hot, and get his dogs fed and hydrated and handled. And but you can't go too far; the water's going to start to freeze. Right, you lose the whole point of hot water.
I see. And so they knew that just from it wasn't that it was going to freeze, but it would get too cold to be of a benefit.
Well, and the dogs at that point, you want to get hot liquid into them. The warm liquid, the food and the water going in is going to hydrate them a little bit more rapidly. It's good for them. But you are all those little things, just like when someone comes into a checkpoint and a musher grabs an extra straw, a bale of straw. There you go, Glenn.
Okay.
And then and they keep on going. Okay, you're not going to haul dogs down the trail too far. You're going to get out of town or get out of the village and then bed your dogs down away from other mushers. And there's a psychological thing to that. A lot of times the mushers and the dogs are so in tune, they're so one with each other that they don't even want the outside influences. They're just going to bed down and continue as a team away from the hustle and bustle of a checkpoint.
You called to keep an eye on, and I heard a story about this, and I want to know whether it's true. Thomas Warner comes out of Galena, tries to pass Dallas Seavey. Tell me about what happened.
You know what? You've got one up on me, Glenn, because I'm not sure.
Well, now, Bonnie told me about this. What she said happened was that Dallas Seavey saw Warner coming off in the distance, pulled up all of his dog stakes, tried to get his dogs on the road right away, so that he didn't get overtaken by him. He must be worried about Thomas Warner, the rookie.
He's got to be worried. Absolutely. Everybody needs to be watching Thomas Warner because he is that good. And I'll tell you what, for a rookie to win the Iditarod would be an incredible feat. But
never been done? Well, other than the first one.
That's right. You're so good. But I'll tell you what, that would be very typical of Dallas or any musher to say, whoa, 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 if he gets by me, I'm going to lose my edge. Aaron Burmeister, now he's having a phenomenal race. He's only about 7 miles outside of Hooksville right now.
Oh my gosh.
He's just been keeping steady on good fast pace. His dogs have been running about 7-8 miles an hour and just really has a nice little buffer between he and Dallas, Martin, and Thomas.
All right. Now tell me, Aaron Burmeister, he always seemed like the Energizer Bunny. He dropped a lot of dogs, but he and the dogs that were left, they knew each other. They worked together. It was amazing last year.
Yes, yes. And the thing with Aaron, you have to remember, he's not only a member, he's a member. He's one of the board of directors for the Iditarod. So his investment in the race is not only his joy and passion for mushy dogs and running the Iditarod, but he also looks at it from a board standpoint, from a business standpoint. But he has got an amazing relationship with his dogs. And the last time I spoke with him, he said, sometimes I think I know what they're thinking, and I know they know what I'm thinking before I think it.
Now, he's got to take his 8-hour. How much does that cost him? Normally, these guys will bed down 4, 5, 6 hours max. Does the 8 hours cost him a couple hours or what?
It's going to cost him. I'll tell you what's going to happen. We've got a number of mushers that are taking their 24 in Galena right now.
Wow.
And yeah, there's a few.
What idea behind that?
Well, I'll tell you, Huslia is not a regular checkpoint. It's a special checkpoint this year because of Fairbanks. And so it's a very small village. It doesn't have the amenities that Galena has. Galena has a much larger population. And so consequently, and you look at, like, for example, Galena has about 500 people. Huslia has about 30. And so Jeff King, who was the first to declare his 24 in Galena, his premise was, this is a familiar checkpoint for me and my dogs. I know what my creature comforts are that are going to be here for me. I get a bed, I get a hot meal cared for. I'm going to have good rest. Not knowing what Huslia had waiting, he said, this is the best time as any. So I think a lot of mushers are taking that strategy. But, then you have toward the back of the pack, you've got Rick Casillo, Lance Mackey, and Jason Mackey. 3 of them did their 24 in Tanana, and I think it's obviously there are some issues going on there, but their 24 is under their belt. So
what happened was it Lance Mackey? I mean, there's this really horrible on the Iditarod site, Iditarod.com. He's bruised, every part of him. His face is bruised, his fingers are bruised. I mean, it just looks painful. What's going on there?
He is in deep pain. I tell you what, I watched a video of Lance last night, and even when I spoke with Lance Saturday at the ceremonial start, I got a few tears in my eyes talking with him. And last night I had a good cry. Lance had been so good for this sport. He's been fabulous for the Iditarod. But, all of the cancer treatments and the health issues he's had because of cancer, it's catching up to him. And his body is just giving out. And his fingers are swelling They're bruising. He says he feels like his fingernails are being pulled out. It's that painful for him. And so he's just really, really struggling, which obviously, as we all know with Lance Mackey, that's not, he's a gutsy man, but that's not how he's used to feeling. His brother Jason's running with him, and they're committed to getting to know him together.
Okay. Well, that sounds like he's got good support around. Tell me about the leaders. Tell me where people are. You gave us Burmeister, just a few miles outside of Huslia, which people probably don't recognize at all. But what is it, about 60 miles north of the Yukon?
That's correct. It's just maybe a little closer to 80, but it's a small village. It's the hometown of famous musher George Atla. That's where George Atla was from, and it's put out a lot of great mushers.
That's right, the Huslia Hustler. I remember that.
You
now.
got it. I do too. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, I was on a ship with George Atla, and it was some of the most exciting hours of my life because he drove the boat at about 60 miles an hour up and down the Yukon. It was terrifying.
That would be terrifying.
All right, well, give us what to look for here in the next, because we only got a minute or so left with you.
All right, my friend. Here's what we're looking at. You've got that top 4 that's pushing on. It'll be interesting to see where Aaron Burmeister takes his mandatory 8 hours. Meanwhile, you've got Stevie Booster Warner, and then in Galena, or out of Galena, I should say, is Hugh Neff and Kurt Perano. They are both out of Galena, and then in Galena, you've got King, Zirkle, Royer, Mars, Anderson, a whole slew. I mean, you're looking at about 15 mushers. So once they leave, they're going to be tripping over each other up that trail. It's going to be another highway once they leave that checkpoint. But the trail's hard and fast, and it's still staying very, very cold.
Oh, man. I love this race. I'm so glad that you can take some time out of your day. Cheryl Mativa with us to cover the Iditarod. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
This is the Glen Biegel Show. You're listening to KOAN KVNT, and I would love to hear from you. We're going to be on with Terrence Shenigan. He'll give us a little bit of the history of some of the places that our mushers are at, and remembering a run that he did, the Serum Run, which is what our Iditarod remembers. Also, other things to cover today. It seems like Hillary's having a little bit of trouble, and I wanted to talk about arming village public safety officers, and what does it mean that only 3 out of 20 that tried, but out of 87 who exist as village public safety officers, could pass all the tests. We'll talk about that 28 minutes after the hour. Stay tuned, folks. Glen Biegel Show. Sometimes I don't think you take this program seriously.
I'm having a little too much
Miss
fun with the
Bonnie Cameron.
music.
Yes, it is. It's the Glen Biegel Show. Let me tell you about my friends over at Country Financial, Mike Daniels and his team, protecting cars, homes, farms, lives, and futures. They help you discover what your responsibilities are, and then they help you plan for what your future could be and what it should be, what you have earned throughout your life. Great folks, 13 locations, and just a whole team of local people to ask you all the questions in order to help define what your responsibilities are and what your future will be. Country Financial can be found online at countryfinancial.com, and you can also call them at 866-COUNTRY. Country is spelled
COUNTRY.
Thank you, Bonnie. The most unserious producer that I've ever witnessed in my life. 569-1080-357. 5868. Before I get into a discussion here with Terrence Shinigan about what's going on, you ran the serum run, and so you've got more information than 99.999% of people, and you know who I consider to be essentially the guy who's got kind of the race in the bag. So that's Dallas Seavey. We'll talk about that. First, before we do that, though, you are involved in law enforcement. I don't want to get any more detailed than that. Tell me about, can you talk about this? The project to arm village public safety officers? Is that?
I can maybe.
Oh, hold on. Go ahead.
From a personal perspective, I can maybe give you some insight, having come from a village. I'm not sure what the department's position is, and I don't know if that article specifically, but sure.
Well, basically what happened is we passed a law which said village public safety officers can be armed.
Mm-hmm.
There was a confrontation, somebody thinking they were going to commit suicide ends up shooting an officer who was not armed in the back with a rifle, kills him. And so they decided that it might be better if we armed village public safety officers. Seems pretty reasonable. The difficulty is these are not policemen. They're not troopers. A lot of people who are village public safety officers, most of them, I think, are from the village.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever the family, whatever the social situations are, if I may be a little bit obtuse there and, describe them, they could be involved in a lot of these things in a very personal way. And that makes life a lot harder. It makes decisions a lot harder. So is that a clear understanding of this? I mean, how hard to distribute justice in a place where you've got kind of a personal stake?
It's tough. It's really tough. I grew up with VPSOs in the village, and we weren't from the community, though. I can tell you we didn't, as children, afford them the same respect as those that were from the village. And I remember even after I'd left, I'd hear stories about VPSOs that weren't from the community, and they'd be chased out of town. Eventually, just put so much stress and pressure put on them personally that they'd leave, and it was really tough for them. There is a sense of rapport, and I can speak even as a trooper. When you're familiar with an area, it's very helpful, and it helps you to build relationships. So I think the concept of having a local presence is good. But I think that PSO program, it's in the right direction. We're moving the right direction. There are a lot of challenges that it faces. And, in my role and capacity, I don't have any influence or input on that. But I do believe that one of the things that I see us working toward now is a VPSO profiled with the Alaska Police Standards Council, where we're working them in that progression. And a lot of the VPSOs were asking for that for many years, saying we are essentially civilians. We're not certified police officers. I think part of the credibility that comes to them in that role, more credibility will be added as they gain proficiency and certifications and things like that align them more like a police officer.
So the goal is to get the training, get the instruction, and more like a police officer. And a lot of people probably aren't familiar that you have to go through a lot of rigorous moral, ethical training as a police officer, so that you make just like a soldier.
They get a very abbreviated version in our own environment. So they come down to the same not into our academies, but they train at the same site at different times. So when the police aren't there, or the troopers in the academy, then the VPSOs come down. But there's right now there's a very shortened version of things, and it's sort of a mix of firefighting and first responder, first aid, and self-defense,
grief counseling.
Yeah, and so they're out there trying to be that first responder. The difference is that the money and stuff that pays in their hiring process, although it's essentially connected with DPS, it is still part of the Native associations, the nonprofit associations, and there are a lot of challenges and difficulties with that. So they're sort of not in a direct line under the Department of Public Safety. That's one of the challenges. I see that process trying to change right now, because they are trying to not just arm them, but
raise the standards.
They're raising the standards, and they're also
that's what I want to talk. And Terrence Shinnigan is in studio here with me. We're talking about village public safety officers. So 20 of them applied to carry firearms as essentially a part of their duties.
Correct.
Gives them a different level. It probably would afford them different tools, and and they have to have discernment amongst that. In order to carry one on behalf of the state of Alaska, be charged with, you got to have a lot of training. You got to pass a fairly strict background check. Only 3 out of 20 who have the 87. So you have 87 total village public safety officers. 20 asked to be considered to carry firearms. 3 passed.
Well, let me tell you some things that are different between the hiring processes. When you're a trooper, you're hired with all this stuff in mind, through the door at the very beginning, if you're capable of carrying one, and then you still have to pass all the training that comes after.
90% of people probably couldn't pass the troopers.
It's meet all those requirements. But VPSO's already been hired under a completely different set of standards and expectations that are just different. And so the things that maybe the trooper was being critiqued, the VPSO wasn't. So there are a lot more candidates that might not be eligible or meet those things. And so they've already been in their career path for some time. And it's
what I think I hear you say is the system will right itself. It will find the candidates who can pass this, because this is what this new job and this new view of it requires.
Yeah. And another population coming from the Native population, we lose a large percentage of us to be in law enforcement, education, medical field between the ages of 16 and 24. That's the time they're most vulnerable, mostly the males. And we see that in the recidivism rates and violent crimes and the incarceration rates. We have weak family structures in many of the communities, and even in my own community, where you have one or both parents are absent or not that involved, and so when you see that happening, a lot of the younger folks are falling through the cracks, and they make a mistake, but sometimes that means that they're not going to get into law enforcement, or they're not going to become a teacher. Because they're making these mistakes early in life, and it just rules that out.
Before they realize that paths I can take. One is a really hard path. It's a narrow path.
Yes.
But it's got great opportunities. Talking with Terrence Shinnigan. All right. I got signed up for the Iditarod. I'm in. I'm hitting the refresh button on my screen. I can't take my eyes off of it. I'm addicted. I love the Iditarod. So, I'm watching this thing. I see Aaron Burmeister. I don't know what it is about the guy. I thought he was out of the race last year, like several times. He dropped way more dogs than everybody else, but then he kept charging forward. He had 6 dogs or something, and he ran the last 400 miles with 6 dogs. I never seen anything like it. I mean, the guy is tough, but he hasn't taken his layovers. So he's going to be the first one into Huslia. Right behind him, I think he got 3 or 4 different people. Let me give you the layout of people. Dallas Seavey, Martin Boozer, Thomas Warner, which a lot of people are speaking highly of. Hugh Neff, which is a friend of Tom Anderson. He's on in the morning here on the program. And Kurt Pirano. who I don't know a lot about. Is this CV's to lose?
I think so right now. I still see Boozer playing in the mix, and
what is it with that guy?
Well,
is he just that wily? He's just, he can outfox you.
He can. And what I watch for right now, I'm looking for those check marks that show me who's got the 8s and who has the 24s and where they're positioned. Now, look at Dallas. His starting number was he started later in the race. So in his 24-hour race, they add those 2 minutes every time you're.
So it's all even.
So it's all even. So the further back you are, if you're the musher 78 or 79 that are
well, Aaron Burmeister, by the way, is 63.
So
they take 2 hours off of his.
Well, he started they're not. They're the closer to the beginning musher that you are.
Right.
They add 2 minutes for every position.
Oh, they add 2 minutes.
So Aaron's only going to have to make up that difference between 63 and 78 or 79.
Okay.
And Dallas may have a little bit there too.
All right.
Dallas has
yeah, he's way high up there. He's 40. Now, is that a benefit then to start later in the pack?
Well, it can be if you're one of these guys that has a faster team and you can start moving through that pack early in the first day or two. That's why you see some of these teams jump out. They get that advantage. And I watch Dallas sort of get in there, hang on around the mid-teens, and then jump up to the front after he got his 8 hours. So him being in second right now, actual second, but he's also got an 8-hour layover
done.
Is done. But he also has a couple others that are right behind him.
Now, what do you think? You are a musher. You went through this. You did, and I want to hear about the serum run. You have a lot of information. I hope that you're going to suggest something for the Alaska curriculum for our schools. I mean, if you sort of detail out what the serum run was all about. Terrence Shinigan here on the Glen Biegel program. If you have questions about the race, how it's shaping up, and what's going on with it, we're going to talk more about this. Terrence Shenigan in studio with me. And Dallas CV looks like he is the guy to beat. Aaron Burmeister is up ahead, but he's still got his 8-hour, which I think it means he's got about 4 hours that he's going to lose, because a lot of times these guys will take 4-hour layovers, and to have to add 4 hours onto that means he's going to lose a bit of it. It'll be interesting to see. Cheryl Matiba still thought Mitch Seavey was a pretty big, or was that you?
I think Mitch is right there in the front.
Okay.
And right now, to me, he's still top 5. I think the way this thing is going to shake out, once we know where Dallas is taking his 24, and where Mitch takes his 8, that's going to say everything. Next 24 hours, let's watch where Mitch is, because he's going to move up fast, and I think that is going to show us where his final standing is. He's, I believe, taking a 24 in Galena.
Yeah, that's right.
But watching Dallas train, having lived virtually next door to him and watching him train his dogs, he does things a little bit different. And he's an athlete himself. And he treats those dogs like athletes, and so his mentality and training approaches them from that.
Well, we're gonna see. I really think he may have this in the watch Thomas Warner too. You're listening to the Glen Biegel Show. It's 14 minutes before the hour. Happy Thursday, everybody, on the Glen Biegel Show. Bonnie's going to be filling in for me tomorrow, so make sure to stay tuned, because she's going to have the Commissioner of Education on, Mr. Hanley. So that is going to be a very important discussion. Stay tuned. 11 minutes before the hour. I do want to remind you about Dr. Dan Kiley. You know, people who sponsor the show, they're solid businesses. They're businesses that I frequent and have gone to for years and years. And that's just like Dan Kiley and his whole team over at Lake Otis Dental. They take care of you. They know how stressful getting your teeth corrected can be. And they know that people like me can be a little bit skittish when they go to the dentist. So they do everything they can to make you feel at home. Give them a call, 562-9209. He is located at 4050 Lake Otis Parkway, online at lakeotisdental.com. And when you are looking for a dentist, you know, maybe you just came to town, maybe you are tired of your old dentist, and staff changed or whatever, Dr. Kiley is there ready to take care of you. 562-9209 for the Glen Biegel Show. Bonnie is going to be on tomorrow. Are you ready to talk to Commissioner Hanley?
I am. I have so many personal parents standpoint that I think I'll just get those out of the way and then let the callers call in and have their own questions answered.
Okay. Well, this is 2.1. The state's budget is dedicated to the Department of Education. As it turns out, most important statistic I've heard, I don't even know if you've 80% of the people who work in the Department of Education are there on behalf of the federal government, funded by federal grants. I didn't either. Well, that's very important because it tells you who they're, right? Where your paycheck is, that is who rules you. They're not there on behalf of the state of Alaska or our Constitution. They're on behalf of their federal grant, which pays their federal salary, and they work for the state of Alaska. Whoever allowed that kind, it's just these little carrots, a little bit of money. You can turn a whole society around. All you got to do, you run 80% of the Department of Education, all of a sudden you're in charge of the curriculum. You've got contracts and requirements and, you know, I mean, it all turns around. It's amazing.
Yes.
Well, it frightens me. And so she's going to have Commissioner Hanley on tomorrow. Make sure you tune into Tom Anderson. That guy is so funny. I mean, he's very clever. He's done everything in life, and he went to law school. I've never heard anything like him, though, but he is clever, fills in the gaps and the holes for what goes on in politics. And I hope you tune into him, 6 to 9 a.m. Joe Miller, if you have not heard, you've been living under a rock, and that's not Iraq, not like Iraq and Iran, a rock here in the state of Alaska. He's on just before me on KOAN, 1080 and 95.1 FM. In studio with me, Terrence Shenigan. And why did you get into mushing? Is this like a rite of passage? Is this just something you figured, you know what? I'm McKinley, but hey, how about this? I'll mush dogs for 1,000 miles. I mean, it just seems a little bit crazy.
I've always been a big mushing fan up here. You know, born and raised. And my grandpa used to tell my great-grandpa used to tell me across the Basheriff Lake in the Bristol Bay region with my mom on a backpacker and her in a sled, and my grandfather, both he and my grandfather, ran trap lines. And then, so that was my interest level. I always wanted to get into mushing, and we tried, you know, with your live in the city and or something to a sled. None of that ever works out. But
Labradors are pretty lazy when it comes down to it. They might want to play a lot, but they're not going to haul anything.
No, and there are so many metaphor learning through mushing, just everything, and so a lot of lessons taught there.
It sounds like a manly thing. I mean, and there's a lot of ladies who do it nowadays, but it's you versus the elements, and it's constant danger. It just seems to me.
You know, I mushed in the thing and kind of slowly got into it, and somebody was there helping me to learn along the way. But it wasn't until I actually expedition sort of by myself, 4,000 miles, that I felt. When I got done, I realized how much you depend on those dogs. You build a relationship where you actually know what they're thinking. I mean, you develop that. You start reading each other. They could read you. You can read them. And it wasn't until I actually did that I understood.
When they bark, what does it mean? Are you a dog whisperer?
Not in that way.
There are a lot of people who say that they
feed me.
Feed me. You look tasty. I'd like a bite of that. tell me about the race as you've seen it so far. Any surprising? I know Boozer was out ahead for a long period of time, and he likes to run that race. He likes to get out in front. He likes to mentally torture everybody who's there. And you don't really know what he's made of. He's won the thing so many times. He's been close so many times. So that's the race he runs, and he's running that race again.
Yes. In 2011, the weather conditions were very similar on the very same route as they're going through right now.
And very similar, meaning ridiculously, cruelly, horribly cold, or what?
It started off warm,
okay,
and it got cold. When you get to the coast, it started to get warm again.
Okay, and that's the way it's going to turn out here. You think we're going to get a little bit of weather in?
I think you're going to start to see some snow. Maybe you could, but I think it's going to get warmer as they get to the coast.
Okay, that's normal. I mean, normally it doesn't. It can be cold inland, but it will warm up at the coast.
Right, and if you think about what they were going through in the original Serum run in 1925, those teams were Malamutes. Those are big dogs. I have a Malamute.
Yeah,
and you're talking dogs that are 120 to 150 pounds.
You got to feed them a lot.
But they only had 6, 8, 9 dog teams back then. You had 150 dogs for 20 teams, and they were averaging 9 miles an hour. Well, look at the times on these mushers, 9 miles per hour.
Now, those sleds back then, they weren't made out of composite metals. I don't know.
Big, heavy freight sleds.
Was the food that they had to bring along, did they have to bring along most of the food that they would have, or would they get fed along the way?
But usually the trips between the villages, they kept them small, and they were 18 miles to the longest you'll ever see section, and they're done. So they could eat on either end, but you're always carrying some kind of supplies.
Is Huslia then a very strange route? Because I saw 2 of the leaders basically stop. Burmeister and I don't remember what the other one was. Dallas. Okay, he stopped between Galena and Huslia.
Right.
This is like an 80-mile track.
Right. Now, Huslia still has sprint racers up there. When I was there, I had a team coming at me. I was out in the middle of nowhere on the Yukon just before Galena, and I had a team coming at me in the middle of the day, and they were just flying by. Later, they came back into Galena, and the musher said he was training. He was down from Huslia, and they met several
That's
sprint
where
racers.
Atlas from, by the way. People,
and the dogs were so fast.
People will remember that. Terrence, we're almost out of time here. I know that you are covering sort of the run. Give us just a brief intro to some of the history of the
20 mushers, 150 dogs. They covered this same distance from basically Nenana to Nome in 5.5. And the very first musher lost 4 dogs. 52-mile run, and back then, when the temperatures, which they were then 62 below, 25 below, they didn't do runs over 25 miles. And one of the most notable things was 2 brothers that were around the Galena checkpoint, Edgar Nollner and George Nollner, was running an 8-dog team of Malamutes.
Normal for the size.
And they were Malamutes. Actually, there were 7 dogs, but when he showed up, his brother showed up after switching dogs in a place called Whiskey Creek. His brother showed up in Bishop Mountain past Galena with the same team. So they just passed the dogs off, and the mushers got off. So pretty neat. And they were almost all of them were Athabascan mushers.
Terrence Shenigan, I really appreciate you coming in. And Bonnie Cameron is going to be filling in for me tomorrow. I'm going to be resting up and trying to get my strength back. We'll hit the ground running again next week. Folks, I hope you have a great Thursday. God bless you. And Bonnie Cameron on for me tomorrow. Make sure to tune in to Tom Anderson. He's on 6 to 9 a.m. here on KOAN and KVNT.